made the question. So your advisor, PhD advisor, was David Wheeler. You also worked with Maurice Wilkes. Was that an opportunity to learn more about computing history, or were you focused on the current project that you were working on?
Both these people were completely driven as engineers, as computer scientists, into things new. So you could always talk to them about the past, but they didn't want to talk about the past. They wanted to talk about the current and the future, and with both of them, it was in the nicest possible way impossible to have a light conversation about yesterday.
Right.
Okay? So the privilege was to talk to somebody who was, and to have him, both of them, around me for many years, looking after me, who have connected with the very first days of the computer industry. So that was fantastic, but we always talked about the future and the current projects, or how to work. They both had slightly different personalities, very important personalities. So what I learned from Maurice Wilkes, was how to assess the future landscape of technology research projects, and then where the fertile ground was. He was just marvelous. And that's a combination of getting input, judgment, that sort of thing. David Wheeler, on the other hand, didn't have that particular talent, but he had an implementation brilliance, true brilliance. And the best way to trigger it was as follows. You have some idea for some new algorithm, crypto T, or implementation of some network. You have it, and you do a job, and you say, David, look, I've done this. You take one look at it, you disappear, come back a day later with a completely brilliant, optimized, super solution. And you go, thank you very much, David, and you use that. So that's those two.
Okay, so you mentioned that you founded Acorn, but you started your own company, Orbis, and then that was bought by Acorn?
Yeah, so that's right. So I actually co-founded Orbis with Hermann Hauser. That was a networking company. And Hermann Hauser co-founded, actually it wasn't called Acorn, it was called CPU Limited, with Chris Curry. And they were in the same room. So fairly quickly, Herman and Andy sold Orbis to Herman and Chris, and Herman and Andy and Chris were directors of the whole thing. So within, I don't know, less than a year, but within quite a short period of time, it all became one. But to use an American expression, I was the third schmuck. Okay?
So your participation from then on was?
I was a director, I was a shareholder, and I was research director. But I was exactly what I talked about today. That connection with the know-how of the university and the individuals within the university for the purpose of recruitment, for the purpose of influence, and actually reciprocity. We ended up making lots of donations to the university and the rest of it, but that sort of stuff.
Okay, so Orbis was about networking, so did you have any impact on the...
I designed the Acorn. So we had a high-speed network called the Cambridge Ring at 10 megabits per second. We sold a few of those in Orbis, and that was fine, but that was high-end. Mm-hmm. But again, all that know-how got transferred to one that there was a networking system for Acorn, mm-hmm. with file servers, networks, and so on. And I still well remember Bill Gates turning up one day saying, "What's that?" And we said, "Bill, that's a network." And he said, "Oh, that's very interesting." And then the Econet was to try and do something that worked reasonably well, absolutely as cheaply as possible. So we junked the ring, that was high-end. We went for a very simple Ethernet style design with just a few transistors implementing it, and that's where the Ethernet came from. And I did that.
Okay, so you also...
Where did you find all this? How come you know all this?
I've been familiar with history.
You're looking too young for this sort of stuff. So
no, actually I started designing computers in '79 when I was in high school.
All right, so maybe you look younger than you are. All right.
So about the chip in the BBC Micro, what's your role in that?
Well, again, so I in effect mentioned this in my lecture. Mm-hmm. So before we did the ARM CPU, we did we at Acorn did some chips using this CAD software, which I had developed and designed with colleagues, not just me, with David Wheeler, for example, and Morris Wills. Both of them actually, yes, now I think of it. To design chips, to have a net description, to have a simulator, to have a layout package, to back annotate from the layout the capacitances of the tracks, see if it still worked, all that sort of stuff. So that was picked up and used within Acorn to design a couple of chips, one for the graphics and one for the serial connectivity. In fact, it was done by physically, we still sat in the computer lab under contract from Acorn, it's just all mixed up, and replaced some TTL, and also, you could do more on the chip, so it ended up doing better graphics. So the BBC Micro had better graphics than the competition. The reason it had better graphics was in a large part, because the thing was implemented as a chip. And the chip, by the way, was tested for temperature in my oven at home.
Oh, that's great.
Took a BBC Micro, put it in my oven, turn the temperature up, see when it stopped working.
Did the very first prototype, was it built with TTLs, or did it already have a custom chip in it?
No, it already had a custom chip in it.
The very first one that was built in
that was
a week?
Sorry, that one didn't.
Oh, okay.
The one that was built in a week didn't, but we were... didn't quite have the graphics. God, you've done some research here.
Okay.
The real hard implementation with all the features. Mode 0, which was a particular high resolution mode, was only available on the chip version.
So you were talking about the CAD that was developed for the Cambridge Fast Ring project.
Okay, so it wasn't just the Cambridge Fast Ring, it was the Cambridge Ring. So before the Cambridge. So we Acorn picked up the CAD tools from the computer lab, used them. They had good computer science, so that the hardware description language was very general. It was actually a programming language itself. So it could describe all kinds of things. It wasn't restricted, very computer sciencey approach. But it wasn't being developed commercially in any way. It should have been. That would have been called cadence, but never mind, we went cadence. As the CAD industry started happening then, we decided at Acorn that we need a proper set of tools, and I convinced Herman, who was the managing director, that we should invest quite a lot of money into buying those tools, and the ARM design was completely based on the tools, commercial tools, which weren't this.
From VLSI technology.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. So...
okay, Kudos.
Yeah.
So Kudos was a company, 3 of us started, again, Herman, myself, and a fellow called Harun Ahmed, and that did pick up the CAD software from the computer lab, which had been licensed to Acorn for modest money, and used it as the basis of its product. The trouble, this was, maybe I should mention this one as one that I missed. We tried to do too much, and we were too nice to each other. So the personalities were me as a computer engineer, Herman as a physicist with a penchant for innovation, and Harun Ahmed as a physics-oriented engineer who did e-beam machines, electron beam machines. Okay, so we decided, okay, we're going to have entrepreneurial flair from Herman. We're going to have the CAD software from me, and we're going to have the e-beams from Harun. And that was, those two are too much. That's like 5 businesses, not one. So we should have dropped the e-beam business, because that was not scaling, it was hard and so on, expensive. But we were too nice to each other. We didn't say to Harun, you're still in the company, but sorry, we're going to skip this bit. And we could have been Cadence, but we weren't. So that's messed up.
They want to give us a little walk round.
Okay,
so when
so we'll carry on.
I'm almost finished here. Okay. So I was wondering about the financing. I saw a program that was called the Microman that showed Acorn borrowing money from banks.
Yeah, we borrowed money from banks, and we funded things out of yes, thank you, out of people, money with order, right? Okay. Money with order. So we collected money for subsequent product delivery, loans from the bank, I didn't appear in the program because, as I told you, I was the third schmuck, right?
Yeah.
I was combining this university and industrial career, and there is a price to be paid for that. You can't do double. It's impossible to do double. So you have a better positioning across the patch, but you compromise both on the industrial and on the academic side to some extent.
Right, you don't seem to be very keen on the venture capital model. Do you think that was a...
Well, I would if it worked. I'm keen on anything, and I would wish them to put their house in order and be able to use it.
That's something that we didn't have in Brazil as well. So all our financing came from other sources.
Yeah, so I mean, it continues to this day that companies are trashed and not made better for it. I'm not love and warmth I'm spouting here. I'm saying for the purpose of the company, if you get rid of half the people, including reasonable engineering talent, let me explain it in a slightly different way. It's the difference, it's the difference between California and Cambridge.
Right.
In California, a startup company is what you might call a project. You get together with some individuals, you define a company, you work hard together for 6 months, a year. It's a project. If it works, fantastic. If it doesn't, you split up, you sit next to next people, you recombine. You might have been trashed here, it doesn't matter, you just carry on. And it's a fabulous, very effective way to go for California. In Cambridge, we have dynasties. We're very engineering oriented. We like that, that's our talent. So you don't split up and recombine, you get married to somebody, right? An engineer, so to speak. And in real VNC, that's a guy I've been working with for 30 years. He was my PhD student. I'm a dynasty in Cambridge. He's a dynasty. We're a dynasty in Cambridge. So if you don't come along and trash that, it really messes it up. So it's just horses for courses, right? And so for the situation that I find myself in for most of my ventures, in the last 10 years, venture capital has not worked. Okay. And then I further compounded it, you would have picked up the subtlety, and especially if you're doing this mix of academia and industry, you're almost certain to lose, right? Because you've got no negotiating position.
Okay, about real VNC, I was just asking, most of your previous companies had very proprietary things, and this is open source.
Well, it surprised us. We haven't even, for example, we own the trademark VNC, okay? And we haven't asserted it, we haven't even, because we find that, on balance, the goodwill from the open source, which is now some way behind, plus the crappy versions being sold, drive more business to us rather than less business, okay? So, on balance, we felt there's no point going after these small rip-offs.
Mm-hmm.
And most of our business is not actually the one-off license, the two-off license. We get a bit of it, but it's this 50 off, 100 off, 200 off license. So they come to us to buy it. The deals with Google, with Intel, others, they're substantive deals. They come to us. They don't, because we're a proper company. And as you'll find with the Facebook announcement shortly, and in the car business that remoting VNC to a car screen, which is now that's been announced, it's not a secret. We're building a very solid line of product, business units, whatever you want to call it, because it's such an unusual company. It owns and controls a very widely used thing on the internet, and widely used means it can be used for anything and everything. So what's your market sector? And the answer is everything, because it is in every sort of application. So on balance, we've had to have these unusual, what appear to be unusual business models. But we think about it. It's not sort of just a bunch of scouts going. We think about it. And having a good connection with people like you. In other words, people who understand the geek world better, who understand the open source world better, who understand the temperature of the try before you buy and how to pitch those things right, has worked very well for us. And so we continue to be pleasantly surprised, and the Queen has given us 3 awards. And in the UK, that's a big deal. That's like Lula kissing you on both cheeks 5 times, you know.
I'm not sure that the last question makes much sense based on your talk there. But
Well, Cambridge is comparable to Stanford because, again, Stanford, Cambridge is a good place, and it's wealthy enough and beastly enough that it can afford to be sufficiently relaxed that it wins as a result. So even though it's a little critical, fundamentally it's got that in common. Stanford doesn't go after people with big sticks and say, no. They collect people, companies give them money, they have a fairly relaxed attitude, and I think in that sense it's...
But you also have various companies that have professors, like MIPS came out.
Yeah. The provost Hennessy, right? So the big guy. So from that point of view, I mean, it's an American legal system, so they're just a little more careful about the contracts. We really are, as I described, very lightweight on this, and in our culture it works fine. They have to be a little more heavyweight, but in practice, sometimes I call it the revolving door between industry and academia, and they very much have that, and people just go round and round and round and round, rather than a turnstile. In other words, where you have to put money in for each time you go through.
Well, thank you very much for.
You're very welcome. Well, thank you for writing to me.
Thank you for the talk. It was a great talk.
I hope that's useful.
Just one question.
Okay, sure.
Have you ever been here in São Carlos?
No, I'm sorry, this is my first time.
What's your impression about the city and here, the institution?
I can see that the quality of life, because everybody's got good people, everybody's, there are good people everywhere, so I'm assuming you've got good people, but the quality of life, in other words, the scale of life is sufficiently attractive, small if you like, well not small, but not big, appropriately sized, that it reminds me of Cambridge a little bit, because Cambridge is 100,000 people in the city and 250,000 people in the cluster and around, so it's not huge. My commute is 15 minutes, okay, and it's always 15 minutes, it doesn't matter what the time of day is, so I am, we just drove around a little bit to the golf club, and you can almost see everything, and it's at a human scale, and therefore it may be that like in Cambridge and other such places, you're able to continue to disproportionately attract top people, both students, faculty, companies, because they tend to have a choice where to go, and they will be attracted by that aspect of what I'm seeing. I'm also impressed, not really surprised because I knew kind of a little bit about this, about the scale of investment that's going on, because this doesn't come from nothing. So just the both the physical what I'm seeing, but also the undertone in the conversations that there is money available, and as far as I can tell, everybody's saying, providing you make a reasonable case, you'll get it. So that's not a common situation these days. The world is in a difficult situation, and most places I go to, people are on the back foot. They're not saying, well, it's a problem, you give me a good project, you can have it. So that's just a feeling, you know what I mean? But it's, I have noticed that, so take advantage of it.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, very good.
I just wanted to show you something that you might find interesting. This is a computer that I designed in '88 with the ARM2 processor.
Okay, very good.
It was a small talk computer. I actually built it in '92 because I split up with my partner. So it's called a Merlin 4 computer.
So how come you're not in California? Or have you been to California?
Just visit.
Just visit. You look like a prime
I still, this is computer for children. I still develop computer for children.
But you're a PhD student here, right? That's what it said on your email.
Yes, but I graduated in '90, and I'm older than most of my professors.
Well, thank you very much.
Familiar with the history and
He's done some serious background checks, you know, as if I was going straight to jail. Very nice to meet you.
Thank you
All
very
the
much
best,
for
and
your time.
I hope that's of some use to you.
Uh,
Right.
Okay.